Welcome to the Lost Chronicles Vault. Today, we're going somewhere, well, pretty deep. We're looking past the dates, past the battles themselves, really into the human mind, the human spirit, right after the First World War. Think about a world just shattered. Not just buildings, but beliefs. Ideas about war, about humanity, even reason itself. It all seemed to crumble.
It really did, and we're exploring this massive shift using the incredible insights from Diana Uribe's analysis. It gives us such a powerful way to understand how everything changed.
Right. Our mission here is to unpack these huge seismic shifts that, honestly, we still feel today. The ripples are still spreading out.
And what's so striking is how this one conflict, this unprecedented war, just dismantled ideas that felt ancient, almost sacred.
Like the idea of the warrior.
Exactly. Before WWI, you had these iconic figures, right? The Ottoman Janissary, the samurai, the Mamluk, the Sioux warrior. People think of them with a certain awe.
Yeah, there's a whole mythology around them.
And it was earned. They spent their whole lives in preparation. Physical skill, yes, but also this intense inner focus, codes of honor like Bushido for the samurai. It defined who they were.
It was a total commitment. And that made them, well, irreplaceable, didn't it? You couldn't just mass produce a samurai.
Not at all. It was a lifetime's work, a personal mastery. But then things started to change dramatically. The French Revolution kind of kicks it off with mass conscription.
Ah, the levée en masse, the whole nation mobilized.
Right. And suddenly armies weren't these elite groups anymore. They were huge, sprawling masses of ordinary men, conscripts, replaceable in a way the old warriors never were.
So you lose that deep personal skill, that lifelong dedication.
You do, and then the technology shifts everything again. Firearms, gunpowder.
That's the real game changer, isn't it?
Absolutely. Suddenly, all the courage, the hand-to-hand skill of, say, the Zulu warrior,
Yeah.
it means much less against disciplined rifle fire. Think of the English victories or how repeating rifles devastated Native American populations.
It's brutal. Individual bravery just gets overwhelmed by technology. This really cemented European power for a time, too.
It did. And something else gets lost, too, what you might call the honor of the body. That face-to-face struggle, the personal contest. It fades.
War becomes impersonal, distant.
And that distance extends right to the top, to the leadership. Think about the commanders of old Alexander Napoleon. They were often right there, leading from the front, sharing the danger.
You could see them, be inspired by them, they were in it.
But World War I, totally different. The generals are miles away, in palaces, in chateaus, moving flags on maps.
While their soldiers are literally drowning in mud and blood in the trenches, that disconnect, it's staggering.
It's a huge part of the tragedy. Strategy becomes this abstract thing, like those early war games. You move pieces, calculate odds, but you're detached from the actual visceral human cost.
The decisions made in safety have these horrific consequences miles away.
And the soldiers, they're just numbers, really. Cogs in the machine, orders come down, you follow them no matter how senseless they seem. There's no challenging it.
That must have just crushed the human spirit, this feeling of being utterly disposable.
It absolutely eroded morale and fostered the sense of futility. And this war also blew up another long-held idea, the definitive battle.
Ah, right, like Agincourt or Waterloo, one big fight, winner takes all, war's over.
That was the European model for centuries, but WWI, it introduces something else entirely. Attrition.
Just grinding the enemy down, wearing them out through sheer losses.
Exactly. It's this horrifying calculus where a victory might mean you lost almost as many men as the enemy did. The idea of a Pyrrhic victory.
Winning at such a cost, it's barely a win at all.
Right. That goes from being seen as a disaster to becoming, well, a potential strategy. You just keep throwing bodies at the problem until the other side breaks.
And industrialization fuels this whole nightmare, doesn't it? The trains moving millions of men, the factories churning out shells.
It creates this momentum that's almost impossible to stop.
Right.
Once the mobilization orders go out, the machine just rolls forward. Reversing course becomes incredibly difficult.
It ties into that phrase, war is politics by other means. But here it's taken to this extreme, this relentless industrialized slaughter over tiny patches of land.
Just yards of ground fought over with devastating firepower.
Right.
And people started asking, why? How did we get here?
Marcuse had that interesting idea, didn't he? About industrialized societies blaming the machine of death.
Yeah, that the sheer scale and industrial nature of it allows individuals and societies to sort of diffuse responsibility. It wasn't us, it was the machine. It obscures the human choices behind it all.
It's a chilling thought, and the scale was just Unprecedented. We mentioned the American Civil War, which was horrific, but WWI just dwarfed it.
And the geography of the Western Front made it uniquely terrible. That continuous trench line, North Sea to Switzerland, crammed into a relatively small space.
Millions of men packed together facing machine guns. It's almost unimaginable.
It really is. And it makes you think of those older warnings, like from the Romantic era, about what happens when technology and industry advance without, a moral or spiritual core.
Like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The creation running rampant.
Exactly. It's a powerful metaphor for WWI technology unleashed, becoming this uncontrollable monster. It really feels like what Dinah Urabe calls the suicide of reason.
The suicide of reason.
Wow.
Because that whole Enlightenment idea, the intrinsic value of human life.
Shattered. In the trenches, life became utterly expendable. Just a resource to be spent gaining a few meters of mud.
It's from that absolute low point, that horror, that something new starts to emerge, right?
Uh-huh.
Pacifism. People questioning the very idea of war as a political tool.
Absolutely. The question hanging in the air was enormous. What kind of politics, what kind of thinking leads to this? 11 million dead, empires gone, nations ruined.
And art starts to grapple with it. You see it in films and books, the absurdity, the senselessness.
Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory is just devastating on this point.
Oh, incredible film. That order to take the anthill, it's
Mm-hmm.
madness. And doomed from the start.
And when it inevitably fails, they need scapegoats. So they just pick soldiers, accuse them of cowardice, court-martial execution. It's a brutal critique of the leadership's arrogance, their detachment.
And it was based on real events, which makes it even more horrifying.
Then there's remarks all quiet on the Western Front. From the German side, just as powerful.
Showing the sheer brutality, the loss of innocence for those young soldiers.
And that ending. Paul dying on a day so quiet, the official report just says, all quiet, the utter pointlessness of his death. It's a cry against war.
A cry that tragically wasn't fully heard or was drowned out later. The rise of Nazism suppressed books like Remarks.
Which leads to that deeply troubling question. If there was so much revulsion against war, how did the world end up back in an even bigger one just 20 years later?
It seems almost impossible to comprehend. How did that happen?
Well, the old explanations, the belief in rational progress, they didn't seem to fit anymore after WWI. The war was too irrational, too barbaric.
So people looked elsewhere for answers.
Right. And Sigmund Freud's ideas gained a lot of traction. Psychoanalysis offered a different way to think about it. Maybe it wasn't all reason driving us. Maybe there were darker forces at play in the human mind.
Primal urges.
Kind of. Freud talked about eros, the life drive creation, love, preservation, but also Thanatos, the death drive, an instinct towards destruction, aggression.
And WWI looked like Thanatos unleashed on a global scale.
It forced people to confront that destructive potential within humanity. It made Goya's famous line, "The sleep of reason produces monsters," feel chillingly relevant. WWI was the monster born from reason's failure.
And art reflected this turn inwards, didn't it? Exploring the subconscious, the irrational.
Definitely. Surrealism explodes onto the scene, trying to break logic, tap into dreams. Think of those bizarre, unforgettable images, an umbrella and a sewing machine on a dissecting table, or the film Un Chien Andalou.
Yeah, pure dream logic or illogic, meant to shock you out of rational thought.
And Dadaism, too, with Tristan Tzara, choosing a nonsense word, Dada, like a baby's first sound.
As if to say, civilization has failed, language has failed, we have to start over from zero, from absurdity.
Both movements, heavily influenced by Freud, were trying to understand these hidden currents, the irrationality the war laid bare. And you hear it in music, too. Stravinsky breaking forms in The Soldier's Tale. Even Ravel's repetitive, almost obsessive bolero. Something shifted in sound as well.
It's amazing how such trauma sparked such intense creativity. The 1920s avant-garde, born from that devastation, really set the stage for so much 20th century art.
It really did. Pop art owes a debt to it. Think of Isadora Duncan, too, completely revolutionizing dance, making it raw, emotional.
And Tolkien, creating Middle-earth. That feels different, almost like looking backward.
In a way, yes. Tolkien saw the war firsthand, lost close friends in the trenches. Middle-earth, drawing on ancient myths, feels like an attempt to recover values he felt were lost: honor, loyalty, courage. In the face of that industrialized horror, it's deeply personal.
That personal cost. For the survivors, the scars were everywhere, not just physical.
Oh, the psychological trauma was immense. Shell shock, PTSD as we'd call it now. Countless soldiers came back broken inside, like that English officer you mentioned just collapsing. The unseen wounds were devastating.
Millions physically mutilated, millions more emotionally scarred. There must have been this desperate need to just forget, to escape.
Absolutely. Which partly explains the explosion of American culture in Europe. Jazz, dancing, anything that felt alive, vibrant, new.
The roaring 20s. Hedonism, breaking rules, shorter skirts, drinking, smoking, trying to dance away the trauma.
It seems like it, a desperate grab for life, for sensation after staring into the abyss. But underneath that frantic energy, real changes were happening too.
Like women's suffrage.
Huge. Women had kept the countries running during the war. Their contribution was undeniable. In Britain, many women finally got the vote. That's a massive shift.
And women entering the workforce, changing fashions.
Really?
Daily life was transforming. But there was also this shadow, this demographic crisis.
A huge problem. Millions of young men, the generation that would normally be starting families, were gone. It left this massive imbalance.
Older men, younger women, but a whole cohort missing.
And on top of that, a reluctance to even have children who'd want to bring kids into a world that had just done that. So governments actually started policies to encourage births.
Wow. So you have this world desperate for peace, profoundly changed, yearning to forget the horror. And yet
somehow it finds itself on the path to an even worse conflict. If everyone hated war so much after 1918, how did we get to 1939?
that's the terrifying question, isn't it? How did that aversion to war get twisted or overcome?
The path, unfortunately, led through the rise of totalitarianism. That's where the disillusionment and bitterness ultimately took root in many places, paving the way for the next catastrophe.
The echoes of the First World War, they just keep reverberating, shaping how we see conflict, how we understand ourselves, the art, the changes in society, the questions people asked then. They still feel incredibly relevant.
They really do. It's a period that holds so many painful but vital lessons.
Thank you for joining us in this chapter, and never stop opening the vault.